Hey, Coach, it's Joe Salas here. Got a special guest today, Drew Piscopo, who is the offensive coordinator at Ashe County. He runs a prolific passing offense there. He's a Mike Leach disciple, great clinician speaker. Seen Drew speak multiple times, and I always put Drew and Patrick Taylor. They're both just so much smarter than me. I just try to take notes as best I can and try to learn from them. But I had a phone call with Drew last week, and we had some interesting conversations. And I wanted him to kind of share these two conversations. And Drew, what I call that mesh 92 Coug. What do you call the one that we're talking about?
I just call it 92.
Just 92. Okay, so we got a specific mesh play that he's going to teach us today, just selfishly because I want to get better at it. I know he's so good at it. So, Drew, our first question was, you kind of told me your journey to the air raid when we were talking on the phone. I thought it was a fascinating story. Can you kind of share that with everybody?
Yeah, no problem. So I played college football at Emory and Henry College, which is a Division III school in Southwest Virginia. And my first 3 years there as a player, I played under our offensive coordinator, who was Joel Gordon, and our offensive line coach too there was Tom Manning. Now, if you look those two guys up right now, they're at Iowa State. Joel Gordon's currently the quarterback coach at Iowa State, and Tom Manning is the offensive coordinator. So they kind of like flipped roles where, Gordon was a coordinator and Manning was the position coach. Now at Iowa State, Manning's the coordinator and Coach Gordon's the quarterback coach. But so, when I was playing quarterback for Coach Gordon, it was kind of a West Coast system. I was under center a lot and play action and throwing deep posts, and had a real good tailback and all that stuff behind me too. That was like an All-American. So I kind of got familiar with West Coast terminology and long verbiage and, drops and drive concepts and things like that, and reading defenders. And then my senior year, Coach Gordon left and went back to Shepherd, which is where he was, where he played. It's a Division II school in West Virginia, and they're pretty good. If you look up Division II passing right now, Shepherd's right at the top of it. They're pretty darn good. But anyway, he went back to Shepherd, and I think they went to the national championship like within a year or two. And then he got on with Campbell at Iowa State. So that's kind of his little bit of a journey. But anyway, what Emory did was they hired Stan Hodgen my senior year. And Hodgen was the first guy that kind of came in and took it to an air raid kind of offense. So it wasn't the air raid that you and I know, Coach Salas, where we say 95 and 92, and we know what we're talking about, and we say 6, know what we're talking about. But so we call things, like trips right, Y cross. That's how it would have been called, or doubles right, go would have been 6, something like that, or Y shallow. It was all, but it was similar, right? We're doing the same stuff. You're using the terminology a little bit differently, and I enjoyed it. Obviously, switching that was a lot different, but we're putting the ball in the air a lot more. And anyway, so I graduated, and I didn't get into coaching right off the bat. I took a year or two between it, and just working, man. I didn't know I wanted to coach, and I'm not a teacher right now. I actually work for a communications company, and I work in television, which is a little bit weird, but we run what I do is I run a small local channel off the local, phone for the local phone company, basically. But I get to coach at the high school that is right around here. And strangely enough, Ashe County, you can see the Husky or whatever behind me, is the rival of the high school that I attended. So we're a little bit bigger, though, than the high school I went to, but anywhere, that's where I'm at now, and I'm under Brian Hampton, who was the head. Well, he was an assistant at the high school that I played at the time. So he became a head coach, got it at the rival school, and then I came to the rival school because I wanted to coach with Coach Hampton, if that kind of makes sense. But when we got here, when I first got on board with him, he was talking about, what he had kind of coming back and what he wanted to do. He's like, oh, I got a good quarterback coming back who's maybe about 6'2", and I got 2 receivers that are pretty good. He's like, we want to try and get it to them because they're our best players. He lost a tailback, and he had a good quarterback and 2 good receivers. I was like, well, why don't you run the air raid? I mean, that's kind of how I put it to him. Why don't we run the air raid? He's like, well, you know much about it? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, we ran it my senior year in college. I mean, to an extent, and so we put it in, and that first year we actually ended up leading the state in passing, which was a little crazy. But that first year, I think our quarterback, who only threw for like 1,200 yards the previous year, threw for like 3,611 games or something like that. And Austin Kendall, who's at West Virginia, I think finished second. Chaz Surratt, who is at Carolina, finished third. And our kid led it, which was kind of nuts because, first year doing it. I didn't get there till July. And but we weren't running it the way that we run it now. We were doing a lot of, cross and tagging a lot of stuff, man. We were just doing so many variations of 95, and we'd run it with a shallow, we'd run it with a wheel. I mean, we just would do all this wicked stuff just to mix it up. And so the passing game was just boom. It was so much more than what we do now. We were an empty more back then. I don't know if it made us better or worse, kind of looking back at it, because we had a ton of variety, obviously, but at the same time, it's not like we mastered anything. We kind of had to find what was working and then roll with it, or tag it differently to have different guys on shallows or whatever. So I mean, that was kind of how we did it back then. It worked. I'm not saying it didn't work, but it's just different. So anyway, after about a year or two kind of doing it that way, and I was calling it the same way Coach Hodgen called it when I was at Emory. So if you look up Coach Hodgen now, like I said, the guy we kind of learned it under my senior year at Emory, he's the offensive coordinator at Shenandoah. Shenandoah is a Division III school in Virginia, and they generally lead Division III in passing. They're in the top 2 or 3. So I'm good buddies with Coach Hodgen, still good buddies with Coach Gordon at Iowa State too, but different kind of philosophies for sure. But I tried to work on both at the time, as far as like taking the West Coast, the principle of the timing of, 1, 2, 3 balls out, 1, 2, 3 hitch balls to the second read, that kind of thing for the West Coast, and then merge it with what Hodgen was doing with an air raid to kind of make it somewhat sync up in my mind at the time. But anyway, so after about 2 years, and I've always been a huge Mike Leach fan, even when I was a little kid. So I was pretty happy when Hodgen got hired, just because it was like, oh, we're going to do something like that. That'll be cool. And, I just want to figure out how they were doing it, at Washington State. I think he just got hired at Washington State too around that time. It was like, 13 was his first year, 14 was my first year at Ash, so somewhere around there. And, so what I did was I got on Twitter and I reached out to Connor Halliday, in all honesty, who was the ex-quarterback for Washington State. He was a 3-year starter for Leach, on Twitter, and just was like, hey, I'm a high school coach. I'm in North Carolina, so I'm on the other side of the country. I am of no threat to you, but I am curious as to how you guys kind of do things at Washington State, kind of compared to how we do it at Ash. And I was like, if you got a moment, I'd like to talk to you about it. So yeah, he hit me right back up. And so through a various number of phone calls and texts and FaceTimes and pictures and all that stuff, and he kind of taught the system to me as far as how they run it to a T. I mean, over months. Every question I could kind of think of, I placed on him, how they signal this, how they do this, how they call this, how do you, what are your reads, what are you looking at, what are your drops, I mean, all that stuff, the steps. I mean, is it, what if this happens? And it would actually, it's funny now looking back at it, because I still have all the text messages on my phone and stuff. I'm like, man, he told me the same thing like 3 times. It's just hard for me to, like, I guess at the time to have been like, you never move the H, never move, I mean, so it was kind of, like in 2x2, you don't ever flip the receivers around. You always have the Z on. I mean, because we were moving receivers and stuff around and had strength calls. And And so anyway, that was kind of how it went from there with him. But and I did the same thing with some other guys too. I did the same thing with Davis Webb when he was transferring from Texas Tech from Kingsbury. I got him on the phone a couple times when he was in transition of transferring. He actually committed to Colorado first, which I don't know if many people know that, before he ended up at Cal. And he played at Cal right after Jared Goff had graduated and went number 1 in the draft. Davis Webb was the starter the next year as a grad senior, I guess. So I was talking to him about how Kingsbury did things. And, man, it just was, we got a 620, we got a 614. I'm like, shit, it's a lot more. And they did some cool things as far as how it linked up. And if you ever talk to Coach Marsh, who's on Twitter as well, and down in Texas coaching college ball, he knows all about it because I think his head coach at the college he's at right now kind of like came in at Texas A&M right around when Kingsbury did, maybe right after Kingsbury. So they kind of kept the same system, the same numbers and stuff, and talked about how their philosophy of when I think like Holgerson and even Kingsbury were together at Houston, how they had the numbers, but they changed them a little bit to fit certain things. So it's real interesting when you kind of go back through it there, through the old stories or whatever. But and then just more recently, as far as, I don't necessarily keep in contact with Connor Halliday anymore. And definitely things have changed at Washington State since 2014 as far as, through, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, like concepts changed, tags changed. So I got in good contact with Drew Hollinshead, who's the quarterback coach at Washington State, or now at Mississippi State, I should say. And so I've kind of been back and forth with him. And then I guess maybe a couple years ago when that whole thing started, and I just hit him up one time. I was like, man, I really want to come see a spring ball. And just because I knew what they were doing, I knew what they were calling things. I knew how they signaled things. So you could see it on TV, like I guess a normal person wouldn't normally pick up on it, but you could kind of see what things were coming. And I had broken down, I think at the time, like 60 or 70 Washington State games. I've taken them all into Huddle and cut them all up and put them into cut-ups. And so, yeah, I just really dug into it, really, 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 really tried to learn it as best I could. And then from going up to the spring, it all just fit. They had like everything written up on the board as far as every play they run. And it's not necessarily like you're sitting there and you're like, how they run this. And that wasn't kind of the thing anymore. It was more of like just little details, and you're kind of listening to like what the offensive line's calling out in between things and how they're going about different things. And so, yeah, that was kind of the fun part of going up there, was just like tiny details and picking up, the little things that you wouldn't know from just watching a game on film, but, being there and listening to them talk about how they block certain things or read certain things. And then sitting in some, QB meetings with Coach Leach is pretty entertaining itself. So, but yeah, so that's kind of how my whole story went. So anyway, we, us personally, we kind of flipped our offense, I guess, a little bit around 15 or 16, like after I spent the year talking to Connor, and we just changed it, man. We flipped it completely. It went from doubles right, trips right to ace and early. And we took the signals, we took it all, and it was crazy how much it simplified things, just even in my head too, because, everyone asks me all the time, like, 95, you only run it one way, right to left, you only run it with the Y. Now I do. Yeah, there was a time when, hell, we ran it from both sides and shallowed people and tagged people and did a bunch of crazy stuff off of it, and it worked. I'm not saying it didn't work, but, yeah, now we kind of run it the way they do. It's kind of how I try to explain to people. But
I wanted you to talk a little bit about and I just picked it up just talking to you last week about just the philosophy and the mindset. I think you said something like, everyone knows it hasn't changed. We're doing the same thing, and we don't care if they know. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of the truth, especially since like probably around 2016, 17. Like I said, you can go back and watch 2014 film and you'll see, gosh, they're doing a ton of stuff. We're in quads, we're getting quads or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, we've been doing the same stuff for the last while. It's not really changed much. What you're trying to do is just maybe tinker with a thing here or there, maybe try to clean up a way to, that's the thing I'm always looking for is how can I explain it to my quarterback in a simpler way and maybe help eliminate, your thought process on certain things. But yeah, as far as what we run, people know we're going to run, I mean, we're going to run mesh, we're going to run cross, and we're going to run 4 verts, and we're going to run to death, and then we're going to run some shallow and scissors and stick and corner. And yeah, I mean, our run game's not real diverse. Probably only have like 4 or 5 runs, but yeah, I mean, so we are what we are. I think a lot of people know that, but you still got to stop it. And that's the thing. It's I don't know if how many guys out there watched Coach Leach's talk or whatever when he did the Q&A for the air raid certification thing, their clinic. One of the questions he got was, what do you look for in the coverage? What do you look for in scripting? And scripting's, I mean, I just put our best plays out there. And then what do I look for in the coverage? I don't really care. And that's really the same mindset that you kind of have. It's almost like you don't really care about coverage because it's progression based, right? Like everything you're doing is here to here to here. And you should have answers for all that stuff based off your pass play. So you really shouldn't care too much about coverage. I mean, maybe a 1 high or 2 high kind of thing if they're dropping back or if they're trying to cheat up and take short stuff. But, that's kind of the deal to it. So we're not gonna really change anything as far as like what we do, and we're gonna throw our best stuff at you pretty quickly. It's not gonna take too long before we run mesh or 95 in the game. You're gonna get one or the other on the first drive pretty quick. So, but yeah, I mean, they got to stop us. I mean, that's the whole point of the defense is to try and stop us. You can't change your offense week to week. You're not gonna have any kind of consistency, get good at anything doing that. So you might as well pick your base plays and have maybe 1 or 2 ways to attack an area of the field. Just need 1 or 2. That's it. And just get good at them. I mean, that's
awesome, man.
Yeah.
So many people just need to hear that mentality, because it's so different than the majority of mentalities where we're all what they're doing.
Yeah. Connor Halliday, well, Connor Halliday hit me with that one pretty quickly too. He was like, look, and he did it even simpler than what I'm doing. He's like, look, just run 8, Y corner play, cross, mesh, till you're blue in the face, shallow. I mean, just run them to death. Don't even worry about the tags. So you're tagging post wheel concepts off mesh. I was asking about all the tags, all the little things they were doing. And he almost didn't even want to get into that with me. I'm like, no, I want to learn. I mean, I want to learn the whole thing. But he's like, you don't need to do it. He's like, you don't need to do it. You just need to master the little stuff first and just get really, really good at them. And he talked about how, when he was a quarterback at Washington State, they would they'd have a coach behind him. And this is true. They actually really do. They have a guy who tracks all their throws. And so through I think even one-on-ones, Skelly and team, they would just say incomplete, complete, incomplete, complete. And they would, at the end of the day in practice, they had 3 kind of quarterbacks that were getting reps, and, they had their attempts to, completions or whatever there, completions to attempts and a percentage and whatever. And that was really all they cared about was who's completing balls, who's keeping plays alive, who's not taking negative plays, sacks, offsides, that type of stuff kills you. Interceptions, obviously, clearly, but who's just staying efficient? That's really all he was really caring about was completions. And so, when they're doing that, Connor was saying, don't give them another play. If you want to run 92, don't give him 92 post wheel until he's completing X amount on just 92. Whatever you want to make it. But, don't just jump into a new thing just to jump into a new thing without getting good at what you started with. So it made made a good point, so,
Well, that leads us perfectly into what you're really going to teach. I want you to teach me how you run it. And like I said, I call it 92 Coug. You're just calling it 92 with the 2 outs, the H and the Y are on the mesh. Just teach it like I'm your 8th grade quarterback trying to learn this thing.
All right. Yeah. Let me pull up like our playbook or whatever, I guess, here on Huddle, and then I'll share my screen so I can kind of start to draw it up for you guys. Get that started first, if you don't mind. But all right. Get in here. All right. All right. I hope that works. All right. So that's ace. So, we just run that 92 Coug variation that you're talking about out of ace. And ace for us is 2x2, obviously. And there's not, I know some guys call it open. I don't know if you call it open, Coach Salas, or
we call it ace.
Okay. Call it ace. Yep. And, simple for us, just, one point to the sky like that, ace, and 10 personnel, obviously. Y is always on the right, Z is always on the right, H is always on the left, X is always on the left for us in this. There is no, ace right or ace left or anything like that. You're flipping receivers around like I was talking about what we used to do. But, on 92, the Y sets the mesh. A lot of people do it the same way. There's times with us where the Y does not set the mesh. It's rare. It's only in what we call blue. And I know a lot of people call, blue and blue flip and blue flop. But what we call blue is just taking the Y basically out of the game. So imagine that route's not there or whatever, and then making it 2 back to the left. That would be blue to me. And then if it's 2 back to the right, where you got that would be green to me. So it's a little bit of directional. Green has an R in it, blue has an L in it. And that's how we've done it. And that's how Coach Leach does it as well. Obviously, because I told you we kind of take it the same way. But so if we're in blue and we don't have a Y on the field, the H is setting the depth. And a single for us is always under. So that's kind of our rule. Singles are always under the mesh if we're in trips or in 2 back. But so yeah, we're pushing vertical for about the first 2 yards because we don't want to come flat. We want to get depth and make this mesh as deep as we can. We say 6. It's kind of the best rule is set the depth at 6 or underneath the mic. So you got to find your mic linebacker. If he steps up to 4, we want to rub there, So we want him, the Y right underneath the mic and the H right under. We want all that kind of collision almost right through there. As best we can, but the deeper it's set, I think the better, in all honesty. And we used to be that's another thing I changed too. We used to run it like get across the field quickly, and then we ran into some really good teams in the playoffs. They just bat it down, man. They just jump up and bat it like 2 shallows down. So it's like this isn't cutting it. So we just started running the real rules that everybody does it. Yeah, there's a reason they made that rule. So. We set it there at about 6, and of course they run versus man and they'll sit versus zone, which is, the way I've always kind of put it to guys. The best way I think they'll sit is, you just got a standard 4-3 defense. Most of the time that hole is going to come up between the mic and the Sam for the H, and it's going to come between the Will and the mic for the Y. That's kind of where I want them thinking. So yeah, if you're the Y, when you come off, stepping, 2 steps full vertical with us, the outside foot's up for the inside receivers. The outside guys have the inside foot up, so they're flipped there. But just 1-2 steps vertical for the Y, push, because we want this Sam to think he's going to run a vertical to back him out a little bit. We don't want to just go flat and have him try to collide and knock him down or anything like that. So we want to sell vertical for just a second. And as he's working across, find the Will. And then they'll determine really, the Will's running with the H, man, or he's working out or whatever, try to find your gap. So if you come to a hole sit, If you don't, keep moving. That's kind of the best way you want to do it. But you never want to sit on a man. And I mean, even in high school, you'll get that. Like our kids are so trained to sit because we see a ton of zone. Like our kids will sit. And a lot of times I'm like, you can't sit there. You can't. So you kind of have to coach them up, obviously, and correct them the best you can in that spot. But all right, I'll draw some DBs and weak safety. Sorry. I call it just a weak. I know a lot of people call it free or whatever. All right, let's just say for sake or whatever. But on the outside, what they have is a 6-step, what I call capped out. Inside foot's up, right, for the Z. So from the Z there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 7th step gets flat at a 45-degree angle. So that's why like the 7th step is selling the corner, and then the 8th step starts to round it and get flat. So we're not gonna square out this out. We're gonna speed cut it. And the whole point of the speed cut is just to make it faster. We're running away from coverage. When you speed cut it, you may not be getting in the same spot every single time. If you run it like a square out, he may be right here every time. If you speed cut it, he can be here, wherever. We're okay with that because we're not going to substitute the speed. Like the speed's more important to us than necessarily like it's here every single time. Especially I think on anything that's your primary read, I don't think you should square it. I think it's really hard to square a primary look. And then a back, we free release the back. We're a little bit different than Washington State or Mississippi State, I should say, in that sense, where they check release it. We're going to free release it just because in high school, hard to get that guy to really block. He doesn't really want to block, the running back, and a lot of times he's almost in the way where he's not stepping up and filling. You can definitely check release it. You can zone side, man side it, and have him pick up, the Sam or however you want to do it. But for us, we free release it. And vertical set up front, which is, a Washington State, Mississippi State thing too. All right, so as far as the read goes, that's, 2x2, 92, as it would be called. The read for the quarterback starts off the corners. So he's looking for leverage on the corners, basically. And what we tell him, just the base rule is pick the side with the softest corner, and that's the side you work. So he's looking for depth first. If they're not soft, like say you have this corner and he's press, this route is going to change a little bit for the X. Now he's going to go in, okay, try to stack, and then it's going to turn into a true high corner. So that's where you'll get the high corner adjustment basically off that. Very rarely does that happen. Very rarely does that ever happen for us. A lot of times it's soft enough to where we kind of roll it. But if it's press man, that's how it would work. And, of course, if our quarterback wanted to change the play to 4 verticals or something because he saw press man, he could do that as well. But that's the only really adjustment with the outside guys. So we're looking for the softest corner. Now, if they're both the same depth, like 6 or 7 yards, we want to look for the technique of the corner. So as far as like what his stance looks like, if his butt is more, like say you're picking the right, just for some reason, both corners are the same depth. Another thing you can look for is like where are they? Are they inside leverage? Are they hard inside leverage? Like if this corner is way inside the Z, whereas this one's more head up, pick the side with throw the side where the corner's got the inside leverage, obviously, just because it's an outbreaking route. You have room. But if they're same depth, they're both directly over the Z or whatever like that, you look for even more minor details of this kid's stance. So is he in a stance where he's got his eyes looking at the cue and his butt to the sideline a little bit, like a basketball shuffle? Or is he in a stance where he's looking directly at the Z? Now, if he's looking directly at the Z and it's man, or it looks like what we call a man turn stance, it's not as good as a zone turn stance. Doesn't matter. We're going to start our progression there regardless of anything they do, you're going to still start on one of the outside guys. He may fall down, but we're looking for like that little bit of a detail to a certain extent once you get there. So pick a side with the zone turn stance. It's easier because it'll naturally get into his blind spot, his back hip. And then you're kind of going, on the reads here, you're going 1, and then for us, the mesh is 2, and then the back is 3. And, if you're not, this could be 1. Oh, sorry here. All right. This could be 1 as well. Like if you're picking the left, it would be 1 there. Now the back, somebody asked me the other day about like, what do you do with the back if you pick the left? Whatever you want. You can keep them on the right, swing them to the right, or you can swing them to the left and make it, 3 strong over there. I think a lot of times too, if you just, we kind of always keep them on the right, but if you're on the left hash here, I'd rather just swing him out to the right if you're going to pick the boundary, because now you're not sinking the flat defender underneath the out. You might as well just keep him to the field. If you're in the middle of the field, it doesn't matter. If you pick the right side of the back, it's been good. It's been good always. It's not anything we really have too much of an issue with, in all honesty. But you can do it. You can tell your quarterback you can do whatever you want with the back. So if he just knows he's going to throw a rhythm out and something like that, and he wants to get the back out of the way, he can swing him to the other side. Literally for us, you just look at him and say, "Get on my left, swing left." That's what he says to him. So, we try to keep that part pretty simple or whatever. But so we throw a bunch of rhythm outs, obviously a bunch of just capped rhythm outs. And then we get to the mesh second. And the whole point of getting to the mesh second is we just want to be on time to it. And then, of course, as people like Coach Leach and all those guys even talked about too, you're saying the mesh second. And if you don't have a guy that can really do that very well, as far as, peripheral vision, just boom, scan, where's grass, where's space, out to boom. If you can't do that, you start on the Z. You would go the Z to the H coming here, and then to the Y coming here would be your third, and the back would be your fourth. But what we want is, and it's harder to coach, I guess. It just kind of takes the reps and having a guy who's just done it a bunch. But we want out, mesh, back. And the whole point is just not being late to it. Where you get these guys killed on the mesh is just, coming to them late. They've sat, they're waiting, then they receive it and don't tight tuck or whatever. But we always, the ball by far in a way goes to the primary, to the mesh, than it does anything else. We'll get the back if, they bring Mike Sam and they overload one side or something like that. You can flip it out to the back pretty quickly. If you're going here and like the Mikes came in with the Y and the Sams come in with the H, you flip it, you get to the third and flip it to the back. But that's kind of the read of it. If you want to see some cut-ups too, Coach Salas, we'll on the show.
Yeah, can you just show like maybe two clips?
Yeah, nothing crazy. Yeah, for sure. We kind of get to, I think I put it in here. Yeah, I did. All right, so that's it. So I could have just pulled that up, I guess, not have to draw all that stuff, but that's the same thing again. So yeah, Y sets the depth. You can see that run versus man, sit versus zone, 6-step speed cutouts, 10 to 12 yards. Yeah. So anyway, here's a look at 92. So, all right. The first rule is pick the side with the softest corner. So this is the side with the softest corner. So that's the side we're going to pick. Now, let's say they're both at the same depth, okay? And they're not, we're talking a yard to, there's a 2-yard difference between those two corners. And in our world, that's big. But if they're at the same depth, this is the better stance to attack because his butt is to the sideline. So you can just imagine, he's even got inside leverage on our X. So you can imagine him just kind of coming out here and then wrapping this thing out and getting into that blind spot. So, those little details are something that we're looking for. But he'll pick the side to the bottom because it's just softer. And as they drop out, again, 19 takes 2 steps forward. He wants to set this thing underneath this mic, or it's 6 yards, and it's not going to get to 6. You can kind of tell here. And you want a good slap of the hands, which you get a little bit of collision right there on the H. They do slap hands right there. You can see them sticking out, which is what you want. But he's throwing this rhythm out already. He's triggered this thing. He's already coming through just because there's nothing. You can see the window. I mean, there's nothing in the way of the path of the throw. And so he's triggered it, throwing the out. And what happened too is, just it's kind of like how we just drew it versus that 4-3. Here's your Sam, Will. Sam flew out with your back, right? But he came down. So it works out. And what will happen is if for some reason this corner had flat-footed, just collisioned the Z, didn't like it, he'd get to the H, which is the second look in the mesh anyway, underneath, and there's your hole where you'd sit and catch it, tight tuck, and go that way. So, I mean, that's kind of the read of it. And then if the Sam was tighter on this, the ball would have gone there. So, yeah. So, a good look at this too, if he did work up top, get his own turn. So, I mean, even if this one was down, if he was like right here to start, I would have told him to pick there. And then he turns it and squares it like a man turn almost, and collisions it. So that kind of collision would get him off the X if he started on the X. Like, let's say he preseason or pre-snap picked the left. That collision would have got him off of it. And then he would get to the mesh where we're hoping he feels collision and goes here. So he would have got there if he started to the left, if that makes sense. And the ball would have gone to the H. But, yeah, that's kind of like the play in its base rule. Here's another one, picking the bottom. So it's the same play, same team later in the game. I think the last one was play 7, and this one, well, that's wrong because that's not the actual game clip. But, yeah, they're right after each other. I think like maybe the next series ran the same play again. We got 92, and this time this corner's diving down. You can see he's already planted that back foot in the ground and starts the collision. So that's pretty good. Like, the ball could go here, but he's diving on it pretty good. So it's just like the last clip. Almost the same thing happened. Just got through it. Now our H needs to sit. It's not run. He's open. He needs to sit. Our quarterback throws it to the back shoulder, and he's caught it. And now just tight tuck and get upfield. So, that's kind of your 92 play.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I just got better at running this thing. You got a couple little details in there that I didn't know, so I just got better. I appreciate you doing this, buddy.
Oh yeah, no problem. And again, like if you guys got any questions or anything too on it, just hit me up. But it's I probably like that way the best in all honesty, just with all of our variations, just because I don't even know what our completion percentage was on just base 92, but I think it was something crazy high. I mean, it was way more than all the tags and like the post wheel tag and all that stuff. Just super efficient for us. So hopefully it will be for you guys as well.
Well, that's awesome. I know you just helped a lot of people. The best way to get up with you is on your Twitter.
Yeah, it's at Drew C. Piscopo. C's my middle initial. So yeah, just Drew C. Piscopo, and you can reach out to me on it or anything like that. And, I got that whole clinic video and whatever, with just the cut-ups. If you wanted that, I'd send it to you. So.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I sure do appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. It's good talking to you, Coach Salas. I enjoy your channel for a long time, so this is really cool to get on here with you.
Well, I feel smarter after spending a little time with you because you dang sure you do a great job with it. Thanks for coming.
I don't know about all that, but I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, man.